Thank you guys. I see we got at least a few people on. So good afternoon. This is Dennis Misegoy, Libertarian for the U.S. Senate here in Florida. I apologize that this thing is bugging out. I'm having a little trouble. Part of the reason why I'm a few minutes late. Part of the reason, not the whole reason, but thank you guys for connecting and joining with me. I'm here again, back with another Thursday live stream. We skipped last Thursday because last Thursday I was on live, just not on here. We were on Space Coast Daily because we were doing the U.S. Senate debate with one of our fellow NPAs, not fellow NPA. He's an NPA. I'm a Libertarian, but fellow candidate on the ballot, Stephen Grant, Mayor Stephen Grant from Boynton Beach. Him, as well as we had one of the write-ins step in to fill the spot of the other NPA who decided didn't want to take up the challenge. So, but we were able to do that. We had had a nice little debate. If you haven't already had a chance to see it, you can go follow the links. I've been posting little clips from some of my answers here on Facebook and on some of the other social media as well, trying to keep up a little bit, putting a little compilation of those answers together as well, so that you can check that out. But if you have the time, take the time, go watch the whole debate. You can kind of see me compared to some of the other candidates, some of the other alternatives to the two-party candidates. Obviously, we extended invitations. I had folks from my team call, reach out to the Rubio and Val Demings campaigns after the completion of the primary, when she officially became the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate. And we obviously never got really a response from them. They have a debate scheduled for next month, and we'll see if we maybe we try to make a little bit of presence outside. We'll see about that. But in the meantime, like I said, we're here. If you haven't had a chance to check out the debate, check that out. If you happen to be here a little bit north of here in Central Florida, if you happen to be in the Volusia County area, up in DeLand, I'm going to be there on Saturday afternoon, Saturday the 24th. The 24th for the Volusia County LP Social. So that's going to be at 5 o'clock. I've got the event on my website. I'm going to share. They also have the event on Facebook. I'm going to make sure I share it from the campaign page as well, so folks can check it out. And if you want to mark that you're going with them, you can also on my website. But I've got the details there. They've got the details as well. So come and join us if you happen to be in the area. It'd be great to talk to more people, share more information, and just get the word out. So as many people as possible. We want to reach everybody that we can. So if you happen to be in the area, come out and join us. Going on ahead from that, we've got a couple other dates we're planning for. I've got on October 4th, I'm planning to be in Tampa at USF, so at the campus, University of South Florida. We got the details for that one on the website. I don't have the details posted, but on October 8th, I'm going to be in Jacksonville as well. And actually, let's take it a step back. I'm planning to. We're still working on details, trying to figure it out. But we're looking at trying to get back to Miami on October 1st. See if we can do something Saturday, October 1st. So that's just around the corner. So we're trying to work out a location. So I've got one thing that I'm trying to work on right now to get that nailed down. But if any of my friends down there who are watching this want to make sure that we get something, please reach out to me. All you guys who have my own personal contact information, let me know in case, just in case what I'm trying to set up right now doesn't pan out, we're not able to set that up. In case we want to look at any alternate locations to do a little event, invite people to come out. All help is appreciated. So we're trying to work that out right now. Let's see. Those are the big things coming up. But we're gonna have Jacksonville on the 8th, Tampa, USF on the 4th. Trying to get back down to Miami on the 1st. So we're trying to get out everywhere and talk to folks. So if you're in any of these places, come out and join us. I'm going to have the Jacksonville stuff posted up soon, and try to get the Miami stuff nailed down as well. So we're trying to get all the details worked out as soon as possible, so that people can know about it with a little bit more time. All right, so let's talk about stuff going on. There's been a few different sort of let's see, what kind of current events do we have since the last time I was streaming. So we had the famous flight of 50 or so Venezuelans from Texas to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts via courtesy of the Florida taxpayer. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, except as a political stunt. I think it's something strange, and I sort of understand, at least after talking to a few more folks who are kind of a little more on board with this, you know, again, it's a political stunt. It's meant to highlight, you know, hypocrisy from folks on the left who are, you know, maybe talk a good game in terms of being pro-immigrant, but maybe aren't necessarily quite as pro-immigrant as they want to present themselves as being. But to me, that's again, what are we doing here? And it actually reminds me of something I was listening to on a TV show recently on fictional sort of content, but and someone might know what it is when I go and get into a little more detail with it. But you know, we basically spent over $10 million, I believe it was 12 million is the estimate, to sort of coax these folks coming here from Venezuela, you know, fleeing the socialist nightmare that's there. You would think that this is part of the sort of narrative that folks on the right who are so beating the drum about socialism bad, and they had such success with it here in Florida. You'd think that those people would say, hey, look, here's these people fleeing this socialist nightmare. Let's embrace them. Let's elevate these stories so that people understand the real dangers and they understand the cautionary tale here. And instead, what we do is we spend, like I said, tens of millions of dollars instead of like helping them and settling them to be these voices of reason in an unreasonable time where people are in this country still embracing and really kind of falling in love with socialism in so many ways. Instead, what we do is we use them as pawns. Now, I made a short little video commenting on this after it happened and posted it up on social media as well. But it boils down to, you know, what are we doing with these people? And particularly you hear Republicans and even some libertarians often lament, you know, Hispanics and other immigrant groups voting Democrat very often. But what do you expect them to do as a response to things like this? I mean, number one, everybody's conditioned to accepting the two-party system. Obviously, we're here trying to break that down and break that cycle so that people aren't looking at politics in this sort of way, and they're not just stuck picking between the two. But also, gosh, man, it's really off-putting the fact that I cannot see comments here. So it is it's obvious we're trying to break that, but everybody's voters are all conditioned to that. And if your choices are only Republican and Democrat, and Republicans are doing stuff like this, and this really isn't that different. It's certainly not different in terms of the attitude. Again, they're just using these people as pawns, as props in this stunt. And yeah, you can say, well, look, they highlighted how terrible the Democrats are, how terrible these liberals in the Northeast are, and they have their sanctuary cities, but they're not really sanctuary cities because they don't really want these people there. Now, you can say that, and maybe that's true, and you can say, well, we're highlighting hypocrisy, but at what cost? You know, at what cost? Is highlighting their hypocrisy worth doing this to, you know, 50 or whatever number of people who are here fleeing a socialist nightmare like in Venezuela? Is it worth it? Is it worth 12 million taxpayer dollars? What's it worth? That's a question I have, and maybe some people think that that's worth it. I disagree. I fundamentally disagree. I think, again, going back to what is the proper role of government, the proper role of government, and certainly what you put in as taxpayer funds, is definitely not to pull political stunts to highlight the hypocrisy of opposing political factions, and that's what this was about. So it's something that I'm not a particularly big fan of. Like I said, I can certainly agree that Democrats are not the real deal when it comes to supporting immigrants, but the fact is, when Republicans do stuff like this, they don't need to be. I mean, this is an unforced error when you think about it, and it'll be curious to see how big the impact is. You know, Venezuelans are part of this sort of Hispanic coalition, particularly in South Florida, that, you know, have helped Republicans kind of stave off, you know, growing influence of Democrats, like I say, in South Florida. In 2020, Republicans were pretty successful in terms of beating the drum about socialism and making gains. You know, they took seats. They took at least two of the congressional seats down in South Florida, the 27th and 26th, because they got rid of Mucarsel Powell and Shalala. They got replaced by Republicans, and they got replaced by Republicans in part, I think, because Republicans were so successful at beating this drum about socialism and this and that. And what do now? They take one of these, you know, core voting blocks that are, you know, really firsthand, present tense, dealing with that problem, You know, coming from there, being here now, and what do they do now to their, you know, their fellow countrymen who ended up here, you know, trying to escape this stuff? You know, it baffles me. Well, I guess I shouldn't say it baffles me. I mean, I understand, or at least I'm aware of the sort of attitudes about immigrants and how immigrants have been used in politics for so long. But, you know, the Democrats don't even have to be good on immigration. They don't have to be good to immigrants. They don't have to love immigrants. All they have to do is just not be the Republicans and not do this kind of crazy stuff. And because it's the two-party system, they just win by default. They win that the voting block of people who are really, what's the word I'm looking for? Motivated in terms of their voting strategy based on this stuff. So that's something I'm, you know, that you just, I don't know what else to say really about it, but it's tragic and kind of repulsive in the sense that, again, you're using people as props, making light of these people, and we can make a light of you know, the response up in Massachusetts as well when they arrived. But again, they, to at least, you know, give them a little bit of a break on it is the fact that they didn't initiate this. This was initiated obviously by, inexplicably, the Florida governor using Florida taxpayer dollars to fly people from Texas to Massachusetts. Anyway, so on to other stuff. You know, the thing that's the real one that comes with the really horrible, dire consequences to our, you know, in terms of really like the worst possible outcomes is, of course, our continued involvement in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the Russian invasion over there, obviously. A few different developments over there in terms of Russia pushing for, what's the word I'm looking for? Now for sort of referendums in some of the parts of Ukraine which they hold control over, to hold referendums for the people there to vote in terms of whether or not they want to join the Russian Federation. Obviously, I can see how people view this as you know, sort of a gamesmanship, and they don't think that these elections would be that those votes would be, what's the word I'm looking for, fair or honest or and so they would try to easily dismiss them. But I sort of have a different view of them, because if that's the way the Russians want to play it, I think that should be a real easy way for us to kind of work and, again, try to find a peaceful settlement. To me, and because there was recent comments with Vladimir Putin, again, bringing up the specter of nuclear weapons. And it's interesting, I guess there was some more people kind of getting worked up about that, which, you know, I don't know if some people or more people today are starting to get it, because libertarians like myself and a lot of others have been kind of harping on this for quite a while, that this is really, I mean, there's a serious danger here. You know, the U.S. foreign policy establishment has lied about their motives in almost every conflict over the last 20, 30 years, at least, if not longer. But they've lied about their motives, and they've been catastrophically wrong about the consequences of their interventions pretty much every single time. But getting it wrong, you know, when you go after Saddam Hussein in Iraq, you know, the consequences of that are very different from the consequences of getting it wrong when you get into a conflict with Russia. Russia having the next largest nuclear arsenal in the world, if not possibly even larger, I don't know. I've heard a lot of interesting things in terms of the variety of nuclear weapons and such that they have, and anyway, without getting into the nitty-gritty of that part, because I'm certainly don't claim to be an expert on that, what this thing is doing. Sorry, still some odd technical stuff going on here. But, you know, a lot of us have brought this up from the very beginning of the U.S. kind of agitating. And again, folks like Marco Rubio, of course, our great, again, I'm being sarcastic, our current incumbent senator, who was saying even before the invasion began that, oh, you know, if Russia goes in, they need to face a long, protracted, well-funded and supplied insurgency. You know, he wants this proxy war. It's the same Hillary Clinton approach strategy here, the same, which is that, well, we're just going to try to replicate, you know, 1980s Afghanistan and fight a proxy war against the Russians using somebody else. Not that really turned out all that great in the long term, but they seem to think that this is a great idea. I obviously don't. I want to see us de-escalate the situation. And every libertarian, like I said, or at least not every libertarian, but most libertarians I know and myself have been saying, look, it really needs to be our number one priority. There's a reason why if you go to my website, mystigoy.com, and you go to the issues page, the number one issue on there is Russia-Ukraine, because, again, I think the most important thing we can do is avoid open warfare between us and another nuclear armed power. Nobody's going to win that. Okay, we're really knocking on the door of something, catastrophic. So we really need to be careful, and we need to stop listening to the establishment folks who've been taking us down this road and have been escalating. And instead of trying to negotiate a peaceful settlement since February, what have they been doing? The only time Secretary of State Blinken has talked with his Russian counterpart has been to do what? To negotiate the release of Brittany Griner, which they couldn't even get that right. But you would think they would want to de-escalate this to reduce the chances of actually getting to the point where Russia might feel inclined to actually push the button. Why are we pushing for that, and over what reason? And is it worth the lives of all the people who might be killed if this war escalates to that level? The idea that the U.S. has been, it blew me away that when I was reading one of these articles when they were trying to say that Biden and the U.S. has tried to de-escalate when we've done quite the opposite. We've refused to negotiate at all, and we have been funding and arming the Ukrainians, more and more each time to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. And again, to what end? To what end is to try to bleed Russia? That's not de-escalatory. So we need a policy that is, so that we can avoid really the worst of the worst possibilities. Because again, we've gotten it wrong so many times. We got it wrong in Syria. We got it wrong in Libya. We got it wrong in Iraq. We got it wrong in Afghanistan. So let's not get it wrong here again. I mean, we're already kind of getting it wrong, but that doesn't mean you can't solve this. So coming back around to kind of the news about the referendums, to me, that's a real opportunity, because what I'd say, you want to compromise, you want to settle this thing. Well, here's a simple way to do it. Say, okay, we'll let you do the referendums, but let's bring in other people to observe. Let's let our people observe. Let's let some other parties, not Ukraine, not Russia, manage these votes, and then let the chips fall where they may. You got to be willing to do that, though, and I don't think that there's a willingness from the side of the West, from the side of wanting to preserve Ukraine's borders based on what it was when the Soviet Union fell apart in '91. If you're really committed to that, obviously they're not going to do that, because if these regions of Ukraine and the places in the Donbass and other parts that Russia's currently occupying, if they want to go on to the Russian side, are they going to let them? It doesn't seem that way. They don't seem to really have an interest in them. But, from my perspective, again, political self-determination, if we can largely ensure that it's a fair vote, and again, you bring in third party and another country to do it, and you say, okay, we'll do it. And obviously, if the Russians won't agree to that, well, then then obviously you can sort of undercut the argument for it. But at least give it an opportunity. And again, we've got to be willing to accept that maybe, just maybe, people in these regions don't want to be part of Ukraine and would rather be part of Russia. If that's the case, who are we to say, and how? And again, are we willing to go to nuclear war? Are we willing to run the risk of that? And how much war are we willing to go to deny people in these regions political self-determination? What sense does it make? What are we achieving? Is it for democracy if actually the people in these regions don't want to be part of this? I understand the aversion to people in certain regions want to secede or leave from one government to another. I can see why that makes governments nervous to see that happen, but at the same time, you can't wave the banner of democracy and political self-determination and not actually allow people to decide whether or not they want to be part of a government. Almost every country that exists, not every country, but so many of countries, and particularly us in the West, in the Western Hemisphere, I mean specifically, pretty much all of our governments exist because at some point they were colonies of a foreign power, and they declared independence and they separated from them, or they separated from another larger country that existed on this continent. It was more common in South America, but the point still being, this is how a lot of this stuff has happened. But again, who gets to decide? And should it be this international order of the West who decides what the borders are going to be and they need to be protected? Or is it up to the people who live in these places to decide what flag do they want to fly in their place? Whose laws do they want to adhere to? What government do they want to be a part of? What nation do they want to be a part of? Or do they want to be a part of any nation? Again, you either believe in political self-determination or you don't. So I think that's... and even if you don't, even if you don't believe in that, even if you think, well, gosh, we really want to stick with the 1991 borders, the post-Soviet Union breakup borders, in all the former Soviet territories, even if that's really so important to us, you got to ask the question, what's it worth to us to do it? Okay? Because we're already pumped in tens of billions of dollars. Okay? Is it worth it to us to push it to the point of, is it worth it to us to push the point of, because obviously this is part of a ploy to, on Russia's part, to say, well, now this is Russian territory, and now if Ukraine tries to reclaim this Russian territory that has been made Russia because the people voted in these referendums, now they're attacking the territorial integrity of Russia. Now Russia will feel justified by their own sort of defense doctrine to use even tactical nukes, the smaller nukes and whatever, but to really just go over the top and say, are we willing to cross that line? Or how far are we willing to go over this? To do what? Can't we do this in a better way? Can't we do better and avoid this? And again, there's a lot of people, and it's certainly pervasive in our political discourse, in the mainstream political discourse, to say, look, oh, Putin is he's a madman and trying to build an empire and whatever. And look, if you believe that, if you buy into the supervillain caricature, obviously you think there's no negotiating, there's no compromise, there's none of this stuff. But to me, I don't usually buy into the supervillain caricatures. We've seen it way too many times. Saddam is Hitler, and the evidence is going to come in the form of a mushroom cloud, and same with Bashar al-Assad and everybody else. Every time we're in a conflict with someone, we see them caricatured as this, the next Hitler or some kind of madman, and trying to build an empire and whatever. We always hear this stuff, and we shouldn't be so susceptible to it. And frankly, even if on some level you believe it or you're on the fence about it, you got to recognize, though, that even if all of that were true, what's the trade-off? What's the cost, man? We got to consider the cost. And again, the cost is not just the money. The cost is that, and that cost is already pretty high. When you're talking about tens of billions of dollars, Russia's entire, defense spending, military budget is not even 70 billion, okay? And we've already sent, 40, 50 billion, or at least have allocated towards Ukraine, just within this year. So, we got to have a little bit of perspective here and recognize that, what is possible on their side, and what the potential for bad consequences. What are we going to, again, the cost in terms of the human cost, both the cost for Ukraine itself, because they're the ones getting killed. It's their country that's getting blown apart. And they've been the ones suffering in terms of that. But again, if this thing escalates further, again, the U.S. is not a neutral observer here. The U.S. is not a party trying to sue for peace here. The U.S. has been refusing to negotiate with one side, throwing sanctions on them, and then arming the other side and providing material aid, money and weapons to one side, putting sanctions on the other. We're not a neutral party in this by any means. So when this escalates, if this escalates, heaven forbid, if it escalates to that point, what is the potential cost? What is the potential for human suffering? And I think it's pretty high, and why do we keep on a policy that pushes us closer and closer to something that was supposed to be, we were supposed to be done with this after the Cold War. We spent decades and decades, as the first part of my life, I'm old enough to remember a little bit of the Cold War. I remember the Berlin Wall falling, and I was a little kid at the time, and what big news it was when the USSR came apart. But that was the time when we were living through the whole mutually assured destruction and the whole worry about that. We never thought at that time that, gosh, we're going to go back into this and again put ourselves in a situation where we're going to be head to head against Russia, who's got all these nukes, threatening for whatever reason. Doesn't make any sense. There's no more communist superpower there trying to grab up the world and do this sort of stuff. Communism failed, and it didn't fail because we launched a war against them. It failed because communism doesn't work. And that's what we see in so many other places. And every variant of it, communism, socialism, it doesn't work. And that's why the USSR fell. We don't need to do this, and we shouldn't do this. And the cost of doing it, and not just the monetary cost, like I said, the human cost of doing this is way too high. And we've got to stop empowering the people who keep wanting to push these conflicts, man. I can't repeat it enough. This idea and the foreign policy that we're pursuing, the Joe Biden, Marco Rubio, Hillary Clinton policy of let's arm the Ukrainians and push this and just make this war go on, and let's harm Putin and bleed Russia. It's madness. There's no introspection and reflection about what the actual cost of this is going to be, and it's a very high cost, and we got to pull the plug on this. So the only way we do it is by stop empowering the people. We got to send a clear message, and I think the best way we can send a clear message, obviously, is by not rubber stamping these guys who keep pushing this. That's the Marco Rubios, the Val Demings, the Republicans, the Democrats, all across the board. This is part of why I put myself up as a candidate, so that we have a clear anti-war option on the ballot here in Florida, a pro-liberty, pro-peace option on the ballot that folks can choose. You don't have to stick with warmonger Rubio or warmonger or enabler, however you want to think of her, Val Demings, who always rubber stamps all the blank checks for the military-industrial complex, and it certainly takes her part in the rhetoric of Ukraine and Russia. So this is the alternative, and I hope you guys will support it. I got the link to the website over here in the description. Please come on over, support however you can. As I mentioned, this coming Saturday in Volusia County in DeLand. Come out and join us if you can, and stay tuned. We'll keep doing more stuff. If you haven't checked out the debate, check it out, and I will talk to you guys next week, if not sooner. Come on out and join us. All right, take care, everybody.